my series of geeky guitar questions. These
Okay.
are kind of technical,
oh my God!
fun
Now
stuff.
I'm scared.
No, there's nothing to be scared of. Imagine you're picking up a guitar for the first time. What advice would the experienced player you are today give the beginner Peppino?
First of all, I would suggest to go buy the guitar with your teacher. Don't go alone. When you buy your first guitar, you should not spend too much money. You should get a good quality guitar, and you can buy something, by spending $400. Don't spend $50. Don't buy the cardboard guitar. You will not appreciate the sound. It needs to be a good sound because the guitar inspires you. If you have a very cheap guitar, that sound will probably turn you off.
Which is better, learning on a guitar that's a little challenging to play or learning on a guitar that feels easy to play?
When you are a beginner student, the challenges are many. I would recommend, a guitar that has a low action, but not too low that the notes buzz. It's very important the size. If you're a small person, you should not buy a big guitar. If you're serious, you really have to overcome the difficulties that you will face, because when you learn an instrument, you have to improve the muscles of your hand by exercising. It's not going to come. There's no magic wand. You really have to follow what your teachers is telling you to do and do it.
What is your favorite acoustic guitar and why?
This may sound like self-promoting, but I really love the guitar that I created 30 years ago. This is the Peppino D'Agostino signature model made by Godin Guitars, and you can find it online. And I like it because the width of the neck is wider. It's almost like a classical guitar width. And I like also the way they created the bracing inside. This new revised model, they studied for 3 years with the University of Montreal to come up with the bracing that emphasize all the frequencies. So it's an instrument that works well unamplified, unplugged, but also plugged. The system here is a system created by LR Bags. It's an Anthem system, and you plug in, and it works beautifully.
Is it a single jack, Peppino?
You mean here?
Yes.
Yeah, it's a single jack.
Okay. Yeah.
And inside there's a transducer, but also a sort of condenser microphone. So it's a combination of two different elements, and you can regulate and balance them. So if you want more microphone sound, you can do that, or if you prefer the pickup, you can do that. Also, another thing that you notice is that the headstock is thin, so the strings go straight to the mechanics here. So because I use different open tunings, this guitar seems to hold the tuning better than other guitars that have a wider headstock. And just a beautiful guitar. I like the way it looks too. The guitar has been in the market for 30 years.
Amazing.
So 30 years ago, I developed this guitar with Robert Godin, and now this is the revised model that came out 4 years ago. And actually, they're coming up with a student model in the next few months to celebrate the 30 years of collaboration with them. So it'd be an instrument that costs less. When they first approached me years ago, they asked me, what do you want from a guitar? Well, I want an instrument that sounds good. I want an instrument that is not too expensive. This guitar is below $2,000.
Right.
So
impressive.
it's impressive.
Yeah.
And they were able to succeed. A lot of the woods that they use, spruce and mahogany, some of them they grow in Canada, so they don't have to import them. Also, the fretboard is a material called Rich Light. It's a material that apparently is stronger than ebony. So these people found a way to build an instrument that is for musicians. I didn't want this guitar to be hanged by a guitar collector, and I didn't want this guitar to be $20,000.
Right.
I really want an instrument that musicians could use, or students. Because of the cutaway, and it's easier to reach higher notes, and I feel there's a page where they give you all the different details.
I believe this length is a little longer than a typical acoustic guitar. Is that?
Yes,
and I
it is.
assume that's because of your penchant for open tunings and.
Maybe, or also, I like to use occasionally the dusty part of the fretboard, the dusty part of the, so yeah, you're right.
What's the lowest you bring your low bass string to?
At the moment to C. So yeah, C.
So with that in mind, tell me about the string gauges that you have on this guitar.
Light gauge, so is 011 and 052 with everything in between. So it's a typical light gauge, and it's 80-20, and I use Dunlop, which is a company not far from here in Benicia. I've been using, and I helped them develop these strings. And so is the light gauge 80-20 bronze.
I also use 80-20. Why do you use 80-20?
It's a string that has a brightness, is balanced as far as the treble, mid-range and bass, and doesn't have any additional material. Like, right now there are strings that are coated strings that last longer, even though the technology got a lot better from the initial experiments nowadays. I really think that a coated strings doesn't have the brightness of bronze 80-20. And I also have to say that I change the strings every concert I play. I put new strings.
How much in advance of the show do you change the strings?
Sometimes just 10 minutes before the show. Sometimes just 10 minutes before the show. And I have my own system of changing the strings. I stretch them after I put them on, and also I have a way to get rid of the the external strings. Basically you bend the strings until it breaks, and then you don't have any residual little spiky strings that could hurt your finger when you touch this area. But look, I can do it, no problem. Ouch! No,
Yeah.
just kidding.
I have to use coated strings because so many of them are sitting in cases, right?
And then you want them to sound, yeah.
They have to sound at least 90%, right?
Yeah.
And I have to do coated. I don't have a choice. It's interesting to me because the 80-20 has what I call a smile EQ curve, and the mid-range tends to be a little scooped, and when you do phosphor bronze, the mid-range comes up. I tend to think phosphor bronze has a sort of jangly mid-range that can be sort of in your face a little bit too much, so that's my thing.
It's probably the same reason why I'm using, and also especially because I started with those.
Yeah.
So you get attached to a certain sound.
Well, and if you think back to the Leo Kottke, John Fay, that's what they were playing. You know? So anyway, why do you play steel strings? You play with all these classical musicians and you all these different styles. Why steel? Because
I started with that a long time ago, playing John Ramborn's music, and other people, a steel string player like Leo and Peter Lang. So there's I'm close to that sound. But also, when I play with classical musicians, they're telling me that the sound of the steel string is reminiscent of the harpsichord. So when I recorded with David Tannenbaum the Vivaldi Concerto in D major, and I played the continuo, it really sounds like an harpsichord.
Complementary. People have called you sort of a link between classical and steel string acoustic.
That's quite an honor to be called that way. I always liked the nylon strings. I played a little bit of nylon strings, but they complement each other really well.
How often do you switch guitars, and why? Why would you put down your Seagull and pick up something different?
Well, actually, I don't. I mean, I own different guitars, but when I tour and when I teach, or I do a soundtrack, I use this guitar, essentially. Yeah.
I said you were monogamous. There you are, man.
Yeah, really. I've been with them for 30 years. And there are beautiful guitars out there, but it's just, I feel more comfortable with this one, I don't know.
Talk to me about the position that you play in. I've noticed you play, when you have a strap on, That guitar is high compared to many players. I look at you with your, whatever you call that.
Basically, it's a device that raises the guitar up, and you can actually regulate the height. Here, there's a little wheel. There's suction cups here, so that's how it's attached to the guitar. I raise the instrument, and now the guitar is at this angle, simply because, if I'm in this position and I want to move quickly here, just the gravity force takes you here. It's very, very classical.
Very classical.
Very classical, yeah. It's probably because I play with classical musicians.
It allows you to play a dreadnought-sized guitar, have it on your right knee, instead of the classical position where you're pulling the guitar. You have the guitar here in the center. I think it gives you a lot of access to the neck. I'm surprised I don't see more classical musicians using that. I read something the other day where someone said, if you can play 3-chord songs around a campfire and play them all the way through smoothly, you're ahead of the vast majority of the population. You are a competent guitarist, and all the people at that campfire will admire what you're doing, because anyone who can't do it admires the one who can, right?
Yeah, this is why when I teach, it's very important to emphasize all those elements, like the groove. The beginners, they don't, they just want to play the chord, but they have to understand rhythms. And if you can get those and play even simple stuff, as you said, people will notice, hey, you can keep the groove. My foot is bouncing up and down, yeah.
The strum, I hear people just chink, chink, chink away and feel like that's one of the gifts I can give them. Here are a couple of things you can do that will immediately make your music move someone who's listening to it, including yourself, right? As the player. And it's a little bit of the palm muting, and it's a little bit of just understanding how you can push and pull that rhythm, just a little. But what a difference it makes. I have to ask about capos. Do you use a capo ever?
Yeah, I do.
Oh, you do?
I do.
So when you tour, do you just use the one guitar and bring the one guitar?
Actually, I don't even bring this guitar, because this guitar, I have various guitars all over, so I just fly to Europe and there's guitars there, so I don't have to, because they're all very consistent.
Nice.
And so, I just have a guitar there, so I don't have to deal with flight attendant, and I've done that too long, I'm tired of that, so I just, and plus it's expensive, so. Okay, so yeah, this is the capo that I use, and it's made by Dunlop in Benicia. So this is as a little wheel, and then you put it around the neck. So that's one of the capos that I use, and the other one is this one that actually you can put on the guitar, and then you can move it, so you can move it to different frets if you want, like this. But yeah. I love when you can raise, the pitch is really beautiful.
It was interesting because here you are, capo at the fifth, and what you just played sounded Irish to me. I don't know if it is. Oh, it is, perfect.
Yeah, it is. It's a piece called Lord Inchiquin by the blind harpist O'Carolan. And it's nice in this tuning. The arranger of that piece is Robin Bullock, Bullock, and I learned that arrangement by studying his arrangement on the YouTube, and I came up, because it's beautiful. It's a beautiful arrangement.
What tuning are you in right now?
Well, without
if
the
capo,
the capo was up, would be C G, C G, C D.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
C G, C D. Interesting.
Irish music.
That, having the D as the high note, and your ability to do that little hammer-on the second fret, and suddenly you go from the ninth to that beautiful third. It's like the minute you did it, I was in Ireland, and I think, is it really that easy? Almost. It's beautiful.
This is the beauty of the different styles. There are certain characteristics, Irish as that you mentioned. Brazilian is that certain syncopated rhythms, that really brings you immediately to Brazil, or tango, you know. It's there's beauty, as I said, everywhere, you know.
Yeah. I'm thrilled for you that you've been able to develop an identity as a musician that is so broad musically, you know, that is able to acknowledge Brazilian music as openly as it does your Italian roots and everything else. And I do hear it all, by the way. When I listen to your music, I'll have these little moments where I'm immediately aware of a cultural influence.
Oh, thank you.
Sort of a gentle way that you have of moving from, I'll call it culture to culture, or maybe genre to genre, I don't know. I don't know if I know of any musician who is as eclectic in their way of constructing a composition in terms of the way you acknowledge all the cultures. It's rare and beautiful.
Oh, that's a very nice compliment. Thank you.
Do you ever use a flat pick?
Yeah, I wrote a book about flat picking guitar in the 80s.
Was the Blue Erba, did you play bluegrass flat pick, right?
I used to play a lot of flat picking guitar, and I'm actually in August this year, 2024, I'll be working with two of the top flat pickers in the world on my Music World retreats in Sicily with Bryan Sutton and Chris Eldridge. And as you know, Bryan Sutton won many awards and is on thousands of records. He won a Grammy with his album with Doc Watson. Looking forward to spend time with him in Sicily and share some meals there and play some music. It's going to be fun.
That will be beautiful. And Chris is a fantastic guy, such a just gentleman. But the thing about Chris that amazes me is he can play traditional bluegrass at any level, right? I've watched him take a song and play it at 3 different levels of flat picking interpretation, right? But then he can play with Punch Brothers and be doing these things that are just jazz influenced, I would say, bluegrass that's way out on the edge of jazz. And then he can play with Julian Lage, and the two of them can just be completely in what I would call egghead land as far as guitarists. So you're going to have a lot of fun. I think Chris will blow your mind as much as Bryan by the time you're done.
Okay, well, I'm looking forward to that. The workshops is sold out, but we will do it again, hopefully, in Benicia, here in California, or maybe again in Sicily 2025.
You're the only guitarist I can think of who uses all 5 fingers of your right hand when you're finger picking.
Well, I use 4.
You use 4, okay.
And this nail here is just to clean my ear. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, but I use this 4, and I use acrylic nails, for these fingers. So I basically go to a nail salon, to a great lady, because clearly when you use steel string, you break your natural nails, because steel will do it, will break the nails.
Do you bring a kit with you to repair things if you're on the road and your nail salon is not, or your nail lady isn't around?
No, I don't.
You don't?
I have to find a place where they do acrylic nails, which is difficult in Europe and much more expensive. I remember one time I was in Switzerland, and I was in the middle of nowhere in Switzerland. I had to find a place. I had to drive for 60 kilometers to find a place, because acrylic nails in Europe are not as popular as in US. Here, there's a nail salon where every corner, basically. In Italy, it's not. Before I go to Europe, I make sure that I go to my Mili, that's her name, that she does my nails, because they last at least a month and a half, so. That's
fantastic.
Yeah.
That's interesting. I interviewed Mark Vickness, who's another fingerstyle guitar player, and he is pretty obsessive about his nails, and he does have a kit that he can use to do emergency repairs. James Taylor, similarly, he carries a kit with him. He actually has a video where he shows what he does to repair his nails.
I have to check it out.
Pretty interesting, yeah. When you're not going on tour, but you're just in let's say, a quiet period of being at home for a while, how often do you pick up the guitar?
Every day. Yeah, because there's always something to learn. Right now I'm learning 3 or 4 new pieces, because I have a tour coming up. So sometimes an hour, sometimes 3, 4, 5 hours. It depends.
You're very widely considered one of the masters of the guitar. What do you feel you still have to learn?
My first instinct is to create melodies, really, maybe because I'm Italian. So I'm geared towards melodies, and there are people like the legend, my dear friend Sergio Assad, can do equally well melodies and harmonies and rhythm. I like to explore more harmonies, because that's a magic, to how to put chords together. If you think about, the Beatles, right? What they did with those chords, simple chords, but the melody that they built on top of those chords, they're amazing. Plus, also some of their songs, the sophistication and surprise elements of those chords that you didn't expect. That's an instinctual, in their case, musical knowledge related to harmony. I hope to develop that in the future, and so that the songs that I write are also more interesting and advanced from a harmony standpoint. And clearly there's so much to learn as far as rhythms, because we in Western world, the 3/4, 4/4, 2/4, we know those, but I've been experimenting also with polyrhythms and also with odd time signatures, so it's 9/8 or 7/8. It's inspiring sometimes. That will be my efforts in the upcoming years to really explore more of the rhythm and harmonies.
There was a interview with Cat Stevens that I was listening to. This is him now as Yusuf Cat Stevens, and he was talking about how particularly 7 was a rhythm that he heard a lot from Greek music when he was growing up.
Yeah, very popular in Greece.
Really popular in Greece. And he would bring a piece like Ruby Love, he'd bring that into the studio, and Alan Davies, his second guitarist, just couldn't feel it. Just like, I'm not sure what you're doing here. Or Paul Samuel Smith, who was his producer, would just be a little flummoxed by this whole 7/8 thing. Like, what is this? But then he'd bring in a bouzouki player who would save the day and do it incredibly well, But I'm always intrigued when I hear something that cuts through, that becomes relatively popular, that's in one of the odd meters. Because it's not, you don't hear it often, but sometimes you do. I love the idea. I would love to hear you doing more with odd meters and just see what you would do with that.
Oh, it's lovely. 7/8.
Love it.
I've done it. There's a piece called Venus Over Venice that I wrote with my friend Alfredo Morabito, which is in 7/8. Then I build a melody on top, and it flows. It flows. Yeah.
I like to do what I call a stream of consciousness round, which is basically where I'll just give you 2 words, and I want you to tell me the first feeling you have about those words. It's almost like a Rorschach test.
Like a feeling, okay.
A little bit, yeah, a feeling or just a preference. Maybe preference is a better thing. So if I say to you, written or improvised?
Both.
Perfect. Acoustic or electric?
Acoustic.
Vocal or instrumental?
Both.
I'm glad to hear you say that. English or Italian?
Both.
Beautiful. Rhythm or lead?
Rhythm.
What made you say rhythm more confidently about that?
Because it's the base for everything. If you don't have the groove, everything goes away. A lead without rhythm is nothing. The greatest lead players, they also have a very strong groove. So if I have to choose between the two, I will choose the rhythm.
Amen. Simple or complex?
Both. People relate to simple, but also to complex. So I will not choose something in between. I will choose both.
Transcendently perfect or imperfectly transcendent?
Probably the first. To really create something that is transcendently perfect, it requires a lot of years of putting your feet in different genre of styles. A guitar player, actually years ago, 2017, came up with a list of guitarists, the 50 transcendental guitarists, and I'm one of them. And that was quite an honor for me to be mentioned in that category. I think the goal will become transcending any styles and trying to do it the best way you can, knowing that perfection is something to aspire. Maybe you cannot achieve it, but at least it will be a good goal.